Women respect power, not proof. Most men today are stuck in a painful loop. They believe that if they just give more love, more effort, more transparency, they'll finally be seen, finally be appreciated, finally be chosen. So they prove themselves. They prove they're loyal. They prove they're different from the last guy. They prove they'd never hurt her. They become the emotional safety net, the provider of constant reassurance, the man who never lets her down. But here's the brutal truth: women don't fall in love with proof. They fall in love with power, with presence, with certainty, with a man who doesn't need to prove anything because he already knows who he is. You could write her long messages. You could tell her everything you feel. You could go out of your way to be the dependable guy who never misses a call, who always shows up, who always listens. And in her eyes, you would still fade. Not because you lack value, but because you're showing her that you don't believe you have it unless she confirms it. And that's where attraction dies. Women are emotional creatures. They're not measuring your love by logic. They don't keep score by effort. They respond to energy, to confidence, to emotional gravity. And if you lead with neediness, if you're always trying to get her to see your worth, you've already lost your edge. What she feels matters more than what you say. And the feeling that holds her attention is strength, not submission. Think about this. When a woman meets a man who's calm, composed, and not overly eager, her instinct sharpens. She wonders who he is. She leans in to learn more. There's tension, there's mystery, and most importantly, there's respect. But when a man comes in over-explaining, over-expressing, trying to rush closeness, her mind registers one thing: weakness. Not because he's emotional, but because he's trying to earn something that should already be his. And when a man begs to be seen, he becomes invisible. Women don't crave emotional labor from a man. They crave the emotional frame of a man who cannot be shaken. The man who doesn't collapse into apology every time she's distant. The man who doesn't fill every silence with reassurance. The man who holds his center even when the relationship feels uncertain. Power in this context isn't cruelty. It's calm. It's choosing not to over-explain, not to overshare. It's letting your energy say, "I'm enough as I am. You can meet me here or you can leave." When she feels that, really feels it, she relaxes. Not because you gave her something, but because you didn't need to. You created safety not by pandering, but by standing still in your truth. And that's the paradox. The less you try to prove, the more she feels your value. If you're single, stop sending long texts trying to be impressive. Stop flooding her with compliments hoping to stand out. Let her feel your absence. Let her wonder. Let your presence do the heavy lifting. If you're in a relationship, stop trying to fix what she hasn't asked you to fix. Stop proving you're still the good guy. Set your boundary, then let silence do the rest. Speak once. Say what matters. Then stand by it. A man who knows his value never auditions for a role he already owns. In the end, love doesn't reward effort. It rewards energy. The man who leads with proof becomes a servant to her validation. But the man who leads with presence becomes the rare one she can't ignore. Be that man. If you don't issue tests, you'll only receive them. Most men walk into relationships hoping to be chosen. They believe if they just behave correctly, if they're agreeable enough, attentive enough, safe enough, everything will fall into place. They treat the woman like a prize and themselves like a hopeful applicant. But what they don't see is this: the moment you position yourself as someone waiting to be chosen, you've already surrendered the frame. Because here's the truth: no one teaches men the person who tests is the one in control. Women test all the time. And they're not doing it out of cruelty, it's instinct. They want to feel the strength of the man in front of them. So they push, they provoke, they pull away to see if you'll chase. They challenge your opinions to see if you'll fold. If you're not aware of this dynamic, you'll keep falling into it blindly. You'll keep reacting, keep trying to pass her invisible exams. And in doing so, you stop being the man. You become the student. But Machiavelli understood power better than anyone. He wrote, "A wise ruler tests the loyalty of his allies before he depends on them." That doesn't just apply to war or politics, it applies to love. The powerful man doesn't wait to be tested. He tests first, not out of insecurity, but to reveal the truth, calmly, subtly, strategically, because what you allow in the beginning becomes the standard. And the woman who resents being tested at the start will one day become the woman who breaks your rules later when you're already too attached to enforce them. If you're single, the frame is everything. Most men walk into dates trying to impress. They offer attention. They open up quickly. They validate constantly. And they wonder why she loses interest. You don't need to convince her of your value. You need to find out if she's aligned with yours. Mention something that matters to you, a boundary, a principle, a goal, then say nothing more. Watch how she reacts. Does she respect it, or does she dismiss it? If she gets quiet, awkward, or defensive, you just found something gold, the truth. Pull back your attention for a moment, not to manipulate, but to observe. Does she reach out, or does she vanish? That one move tells you more than hours of conversation. If you're in a relationship or married, the game doesn't stop. You must still test, not to provoke drama, but to ensure alignment. Bring up something that matters to you and watch her response. Disagree respectfully and see how she handles friction. You're not trying to fight. You're checking if she can handle your full presence, not just your affection. Can she face you when it's serious? Or does she shut down when it's not comfortable because love without resilience is just fantasy? It only survives in fair weather. But real love, worthy love, must be able to handle pressure, tension, disagreement, not with chaos, but with grace. When you never test a woman's depth, you end up discovering too late that it wasn't there. And make no mistake, testing is not trickery. It's not about setting traps. It's about protecting your time, your energy, your peace. A small no today could save you from a devastating betrayal tomorrow. So issue the test. Let the silence stretch. Hold your standards and let her respond. Because the woman who's right for you won't fear your boundaries, she'll respect them. And in return, you'll respect her more deeply too. A man who doesn't test is a man who doesn't trust himself. And in a world that thrives on illusion, only the man who's willing to seek truth, no matter how uncomfortable, can ever build something real. Vulnerability without leverage is suicide. We've all heard the advice, be vulnerable, be transparent, share your feelings early. She'll appreciate your honesty. But what they don't tell you is this: in modern relationships, unearned vulnerability is not intimacy. It's ammunition. Too many men confuse emotional openness with emotional leadership. They spill everything past trauma, insecurities, fears, hoping it will create a deep connection. But instead, they unknowingly give away the one thing that makes them magnetic, their emotional frame. Machiavelli would have laughed at this. He knew that timing was everything. That exposure without advantage was not bravery, it was surrender. In the game of power and love alike, vulnerability is only valuable when delivered with precision. Otherwise, it turns into weakness disguised as truth. Think about it. A man meets a woman. She's beautiful, confident, vibrant. He feels seen for the first time in a long time. So he opens up, tells her everything, talks about his heartbreaks, his childhood wounds, his anxiety. He wants to show her his soul. But what he doesn't see is that she hasn't earned any of that yet. And when someone is handed something they didn't work for, they don't protect it. They test it. They challenge it. They use it. Not out of malice, but because you've taught them that your boundaries are soft and your identity is negotiable. And what once felt like depth to you starts to feel like weight to her. Because you're no longer the grounded, mysterious presence that drew her in. You've become a man broadcasting his emotional blueprint in hopes that she'll fix it. And here's where it gets worse. Once she has that map to your inner world, she controls the emotional high ground. Every argument, every silence, every shift in tone. She knows how to bend you with precision. And that's not love. That's a trap. If you're single, remember this. Never give away your emotional center before she earns it. Drop hints. Let her see the calm beneath the surface. but never hand over the keys to your heart just because she smiled at you. Your depth should be earned slowly, like a story, not a confession. Let her be curious. Let her wonder. Let her feel the weight of your presence before you ever reveal your pain. If you're in a relationship or married, the trap is even more seductive. You love her, you trust her, you trust. So you start oversharing. You vent your every frustration. You confess every doubt. You think you're building closeness, but over time something shifts. She doesn't see you as the unshakable force you once were. Now you're the man who leans too hard, who spirals too easily, who talks more about problems than he solves them. And she doesn't feel safe in that energy. Not because she's heartless, but because a woman wants a man who leads his world, not bleeds into hers. This doesn't mean you stay cold or closed off. It means you lead with clarity, not confusion. You speak your truth, but with strength, not need. Because real vulnerability isn't about dumping your pain on someone else. It's about sharing from a place of self-control, not emotional chaos. It's not about hiding, it's about timing. And timing is everything. If she hasn't proven that she can carry your truth, don't hand it to her. If she hasn't shown that she respects your silence, don't fill it with your scars. Because once you lose the tension, you lose the respect. And once she sees you as emotionally dependent on her reaction, the game is over. Remember this: your vulnerability is sacred. And when given too soon to the wrong person, it becomes the reason she leaves, not the reason she stays. Lead first, reveal later. Be real, but be rare. That's how powerful men love. She rewards the man who makes her doubt herself, not the one who doubts himself. There's a painful truth that most men learn far too late. Women don't chase certainty, they chase curiosity. They don't obsess over the man who texts back instantly, who reassures them constantly, who explains every word and action. No. They crave the man who leaves just enough unsaid, the one who moves with calm detachment, the one whose presence makes her question herself, not because he plays games, but because he doesn't hand himself over so easily. You see, most men today are trained to believe that reliability equals desirability. So they become the rock, the consistent, the ever-present. Every text is answered within seconds. Every doubt is met with a paragraph. Every emotional shift from her is responded to with warmth, questions, and concern. And at first she smiles, but over time the fire fades. Not because he's done anything wrong, but because he made himself predictable. He gave too much access. He became so available, so emotionally responsive that his presence started to blend into the background. He became comfort. And comfort without tension always turns to indifference. Machiavelli once warned, "He who causes another to become powerful ends up ruined." When applied to love, it means this: the more certainty you give her, the more you take away her desire to earn you. The more reassurance you offer, the more invisible you become. Because love at its core isn't about comfort, it's about polarity, contrast, tension. When a woman doesn't have to wonder, she doesn't have to chase. And when she doesn't have to chase, she doesn't feel emotionally alive. If you're single, this truth plays out in the smallest details. You meet a woman. You like her. You want her to know you're serious, so you show her everything. You reply instantly. You accommodate every schedule change. You compliment her constantly. You make it clear that you're all in. And at first she's flattered. But slowly, her interest cools. Her replies get shorter. She becomes busy. You're confused, hurt. You wonder what you did wrong. But what you did wrong was this: you removed all the mystery. There was no tension, no question in her mind, no emotional distance for her desire to grow. You were already hers, and that made you easy to set aside. Now flip the script. Imagine you reply on your own time. You're clear, direct, but you don't rush. You let her text sit for a bit. You let a little space breathe between interactions. You don't offer full clarity. You don't give a detailed explanation for every choice. Suddenly she's unsure, not unsafe, just uncertain enough to think about you, to wonder where she stands. And that wondering is what keeps the spark alive. If you're in a relationship or married, this shows up in how you respond to her moods. She gets distant and you try harder. She withdraws and you move closer. She's cold and you warm up immediately. It feels noble. It feels loving. But in reality, you're reinforcing her emotional control over you. And over time, she stops looking at you as a man who leads and starts seeing you as someone who reflects her every mood. That's not polarity, that's erosion. Here's the shift. Don't be cold, be composed. Don't vanish, be unavailable sometimes. Don't explain everything, let silence carry weight. Because when she starts to question how much of you she truly owns, she starts fighting to re-earn what she once took for granted. And when you hold your edge calmly without cruelty, you don't just maintain her attraction, you elevate it. In the end, women don't crave the man who doubts himself, questions his place, or seeks validation. They crave the man who stands still, so still, she begins to doubt her own grip on him. And that's the kind of man she never forgets. You must be willing to walk away without threat, without noise. This is the truth most men fear to face the moment you hesitate to walk away. You've already lost the game. You can be kind, you can be generous, you can even be forgiving. But if you stay when your boundary has been crossed, if you tolerate what you once swore you'd never accept, you no longer exist as a man in her eyes. Because at the core of masculine power is this: the ability to walk away with calm, total conviction. Most men don't walk away. They linger. They hope. They explain. They turn themselves inside out thinking, maybe she'll understand if I say it right. So they send one more text. They give one more chance. They tolerate one more moment of disrespect. And with each second they stay, they shrink. They shrink in her mind. They shrink in their own reflection. They become small, not because they are weak men, but because they refuse to enforce their standard when it mattered most. You see, power isn't shown in words, it's proven in action. And the most powerful action a man can ever take is to leave without needing her to understand why. No dramatic exits, no lectures, no emotional appeals. Just distance, just silence, just self-respect. Machiavelli wrote, "Injuries must be inflicted all at once so they are less tasted. Benefits must be given little by little so they are more appreciated." In other words, if someone crosses the line, you don't negotiate your worth, you disappear. And that disappearance isn't punishment. It's preservation. It's protecting your throne, your mind, your mission from someone who didn't value it enough to guard it. If you're single, this shows up when you meet a woman who plays hot and cold. She flirts with other men to get a reaction. She disrespects your time, cancels plans, ignores your messages, and instead of walking, you chase. You try to explain how good of a guy you are. You ask her to see your value. But here's the truth: the moment you start asking to be seen, you've already made yourself invisible. Instead, you walk, not with bitterness, not with drama, with quiet clarity. Because the man who can walk away owns the frame. If you're in a relationship or marriage, this is even harder. You've invested time, energy, love. You've shared history. But if she belittles you in public, mocks, your vision breaks your trust, and you stay, she stops seeing you as a man. She sees you as someone she can mold, and desire dies the moment respect does. So here's the move. When your non-negotiables are violated, leave. Not as a threat, as a fact. You don't owe an essay. You don't post cryptic messages. You don't beg her to realize what she lost. You let the silence say everything, because that silence becomes legend. It becomes the echo of your final stand. And even if she doesn't admit it, she'll remember it. The moment you didn't plead, the moment you didn't perform, the moment you just vanished because you meant what you said. And it's not just about her. Every woman after will feel that energy, that aura, that presence of a man who cannot be moved by games, guilt, or chaos. A man who doesn't need to be loved to feel whole, he just demands to be respected. Because in the end, love is optional, but self-respect is not. So set your line, stand by it, and when the moment comes, walk without looking back. That's not cruelty, that's sovereignty. The hard truth about love, power, boundaries, and self-respect. In today's world, love isn't lost because men don't care enough. It's lost because they care without strategy. They give endlessly, explain constantly, and apologize for existing, hoping to earn a connection that should have been mutual. But here's the truth. Love that's not grounded in self-respect always ends in self-betrayal. If you want to be respected in a relationship, whether you're dating or already committed, you need to shift your mindset. Stop trying to prove your worth. Start embodying it. The man who needs to explain why he's valuable has already given away his power. True presence doesn't beg, it simply exists. Quiet, grounded, undeniable. Test before you invest. Just like a company wouldn't hire an employee without vetting them, you don't offer emotional access to someone who hasn't shown character. Pay attention to how she reacts to silence, boundaries, and disagreement, not just to compliments and comfort. And never forget the most important rule: be willing to walk away, not as a punishment, not as a threat, but as a reflection of your standards. The moment you tolerate what you once said was unacceptable, you lose authority, not just with her, but with yourself. In love and life, the lesson is simple: lead with calm, protect your energy, and move like a man who values himself above all. Because women may enjoy kindness, vulnerability, and affection, but they only respect it when it comes from a man who doesn't need their approval to feel complete.